So, as I was mentioning, this is part of our capacity building sessions within the Transform project. The focus for today's session is about collaboration with civil society organizations for citizen engagement. A bit the story behind how we got to this session. So just as a quick reminder, I know we are all well aware of this, but especially for our speakers, one of the key aims of Transform is really to provide support to public administrations to increase the engagement and the collaboration of quadruple helix actors, and particularly citizens, in smart specialization strategies. So the smart specialization strategies are really connected to territorial development and to regions defining key priorities for them when it comes to territorial development, and in particular, at least in the case of Transform, within the context of research and innovation. So what we have been doing in past sessions was to actually work together with all project partners in looking at defining some shared challenges that we all are facing in embedding this quadruple helix engagement in smart specialization strategies. I know this title looks a bit like Chinese, but basically it's really about involving different types of stakeholders, and really particularly citizens are really at the core of Transform into research and innovation activities linked to smart specialization strategies. And there were four main categories of challenges and therefore needs that we identified. There was, of course, a lot of discussion around the support that is given to citizen engagement, and that sometimes support itself is not enough, because maybe the policy officers that then will implement funding programs, or the researchers that will answer to funding programs, maybe won't have a clear understanding of what is really expected by public authorities or researchers in terms of citizen engagement and multi-stakeholder engagement. One of the key points that is actually one that we are addressing today was about understanding and experiencing. It emerged very clearly that not all project partners have really hands-on experience or have been involved in a full multi-stakeholder engagement process, especially citizen engagement processes. We're all, I think, really very strongly convinced of its importance and of the added value it can bring. But some of us have not been experiencing it yet firsthand. We will do so, and we are doing so through Transform. This is something that is already happening, but we are really looking at good example, inspiring examples that can help us better understand what happens and what is the added value of citizen engagement. And that's really the focus of today's session. And then also we had a lot of discussion around evidence, so all the work we are doing towards strengthening policies and so measurements that can be done of this added value and communication. And I won't go into details regarding this. So this capacity building session is really focused on the second point on that list. And one of the questions that we try to answer is really how can cluster members, so in general partner members, not only cluster members, get a deeper or even hands-on possibly understanding of a real quadruple helix process, and particularly citizen engagement process, how it can be done and what it can lead to. And also what are the challenges on the way, because we know that it's not, even when we go with the best of intentions, it's very important it's a really learn by doing process. So the experiences that we will listen to today will really help us get some concrete experiences. And it's really nice that we have two speakers with us today. So I really encourage all of you to we have planned plenty of time for questions and interaction. So I really encourage all of you today to try and take advantage of having Anna Paola and Annelies with us today. So this is the agenda that you have received. We are going to start with the first speaker, who is going to be Anna Paola Quaglia, and then Annelies will follow. So I'm going to stop and not take more time from the time foreseen for the speakers. I'm just going to introduce our first speaker. I'm really sorry, my colleague speaks loudly. So Anna Paola Quaglia is actually working at the JRC, and I think she will tell us a little bit about what she does there. She's actually, sorry, I don't know why the text, I just realized the text is cut. I'm really sorry about this, but she is really going to share with us a very interesting experience that she's running as a project that is really focused on urban aspects. So I'm really looking forward to listening to your presentation, Anna Paola, and I'm very sorry about this slide being slightly cut. I didn't realize sometimes PowerPoint takes over and does these design things that don't come out nicely as you hope each time. So apologies about this. Welcome, Anna Paola.
Thank you, and no problem at all. So I can share my screen.
Yes.
And, okay, do you see it well?
Yeah, it's perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. So, Marzia, thank you very much for the invitation and the introduction. Hi, and nice to meet you to everyone, virtually still, but I am happy to be here today and to talk about a project I've been involved in since its start last March, right when the pandemic started. So I have heard also your project has been very much affected by COVID-19 outbreak, and this has brought some challenges. So the project I'll talk about is called Biodiversities. It focuses on engaging citizens. So this project focuses on citizen engagement, not other forms of engagement, on the topic of biodiversity and urban green infrastructures. I will be presenting today the work that we at the JRC have been doing on citizen engagement, as this is a project that has actually two streams of work. One is citizen engagement, in which I work with my team leader, Angela Pereira, and then there is a stream of work which concentrates on mapping ecosystem services, which is managed by other colleagues at the JRC. But before, let's say, entering and explaining what Biodiversities is, I do not know if you are familiar with the JRC as an institution. So just a very 2 words on that. So the JRC is DG of the European Commission. It is the science and knowledge hub of it, and the aim of the JRC is to provide evidence of different kinds that inform the policy-making cycle, both in the design and implementation phases. The JRC has its headquarters in Brussels, and it has different branches scattered across Europe, including Ispra, where I talk from, which is located on the Maggiore Lake in northern Italy. And the weather here is nice and very hot. So having said that, and zooming in not only into the JRC, but on our unit, which focuses on knowledge for policy. So our unit work, or part of it, focuses on, as I said, citizen engagement, but also on deliberative democracy. And actually, our work pivots around the Competence Center on Participatory and Deliberative Democracy, which is a new object that will be launched in September this year, and it frames all of our work around these topics. It will work, and it already does, as an in-house consultancy for our colleague in the commissions, as well as a knowledge depository, a repository, as actually we've been working on citizen engagement since many decades. I wasn't there, but there is track of it at least since more than a couple of decades. And it also is a center that aims very much, and this is relevant for you, to work in partnership with other kinds of institutions which are already doing citizen engagement out there and beyond EU institutions. Said that, I have mentioned that our focus is on citizen engagement and deliberative democracy, and I have been told that there is no need to convince over the need for greater citizen engagement on its importance. And so I will start from, let's say, the image that characterize this project, Biodiversities, and which we use to communicate this project. And it was taken by a colleague of us in a train station in Milan, and it represents a butterfly. And I actually think that the butterfly is a fantastic metaphor, both of citizen engagement and of our work. Why is that? Because there is, and I hope this plays out, probably not. It was a fantastic GIF that I'm very proud of, that it doesn't play out, so I'll go back. Anyway, I mean, the butterfly is a fantastic metaphor for this reason, because to become a butterfly, there needs to be a sort of metamorphosis from the egg through the caterpillar, through the bava, and then turning into a butterfly. So what I wanted to say with this is that on one side, we have been acting with this project and through many other projects as sort of female butterflies laying eggs and trying to nurture different kinds of processes. And on the other side, that citizen engagement takes time and it goes through different kinds of phases before it provides certain kinds of effects. And indeed, in our work, and one of the challenges that many of our projects share, and certainly these ones share, and that you have partially already mentioned in the introduction, is that there are challenges for, let's say, the institutionalization of citizen engagement, and old habits are, in a sense, old to die. And there is an ongoing confusion between engagement on one side and consultation methods, for example, on the other side. What you see is actually an illustration that represents a project we have been running in the past, which focused on the school meal, on the implementation of the school meal and on related challenges. And there is a kid that asks to this, let's say, authority to have a conversation rather than to provide just feedback. So, said that, I would like to continue a little bit on, let's say, on the kind of, on what kind of engagement we are talking about within this project. So, Biodiversities is a pilot project which is financed by a grant of the European Parliament, and that we at the JRC run together with DG Environment. It started last March, and we, at the starting point of the process, has been the publication of a call for an expression of interest, in which we have asked cities, and I'll return on the term city later on, to participate if they were interested in carrying out citizen engagement project to enhance biodiversity, as well as in the field of urban green infrastructure. The emphasis was very much on participatory planning of green infrastructure, participatory ways to do urban planning. So biodiversity, differently from probably your project, situates itself very much into, let's say, planning and policy making practice on, and especially on, it focuses on how to plan cities in a greener way by engaging with citizens. The idea the two assumptions at the basis of this project are the following. The first one is that we assume that by engaging with citizens, we can have a greater quality in policymaking and also on the science that supports policymaking. And the second assumption that belies biodiversities is that whenever we say and we claim for the importance of biodiversities, even in policy documents, we cannot but consider the relationship that intercurs between citizens and natures. So there is some kind of relational relational aspect to be taken into account when planning for greener cities. So the kind of work that biodiversity does is, or the kind of engagement that biodiversity does is one that takes, that correspond to an invited form of citizen engagement, meaning that biodiversity corresponds to the creation of situation through the provision of some funding in which citizens could openly debate their matter of concerns and care, and that we're not just focusing on eliciting preferences or opinions by citizen on the specific local matter that fall within the field of, let's say, green infrastructure. Let's say the aim of it was not only thus to, let's say, gather input by citizens and make sure that this input were somehow incorporated into the planning of the city. So let's say the technical expertise that is necessary to plan the city, or into the science that supports policymaking in urban areas. But it's actually the idea behind biodiversity is that by engaging citizens within this project and together with expert of different kind, you can produce new knowledge that is useful to address the right problem locally. So as I said, I already gave you some elements of this, of biodiversities, but to go more in detail, from a policy point of view, this is a project that sits within the context of the EU biodiversity strategy. And it is a very important, let's say, communication by the European Commission in which it is clearly stated, on one side, the need for, let's say, embedding the planning of green infrastructure into a city planning, and on the other side, the need of a participatory governance of biodiversities. We have, through the call for an expression of interest, received 40 applications, and at first we have selected 13 cities, which are scattered across Europe. As of today, we work with 10 cities, and we have been working with, by contracting local experts. But what is interesting, and maybe you can tell me if this is similar also in Transform, is that we are not just working with one expert representing one city. We are working with a team of people that come from different walks of life, some of whom work in the university, some others are based work within public institutions, and some other come from a civil society organization. That is to say that it's a composite team of people that make sure that this project can happen. The end date of the project is going to be December 22. It was actually extended due to the pandemic because we have, let's say, ended the design phase of this project in January this year. And basically, we are starting now with the implementation phase of the local plans. So the project so far, I think, so when Marzia and I talked before this meeting, she told me that you are looking, let's say, for hands-on example and experiences on how others are engaging citizens and other stakeholders. The thing is that biodiversity looks more like a cake rather than, that is to say, a sort of container and of different kinds of layers, which are made by at least 10 case studies. So biodiversity itself, it's a participatory process which we run. And each layer, if you will, is represented by a city that locally implements, let's say, a local plan focusing on engaging with citizens. So today I will give you an overview of the container. I'm happy to answer and provide some examples, maybe also in the Q&A about specific cases. Okay. As I mentioned before, from a methodological perspective, this project is centered on co-creation. And when we say co-creation, we mean that we have been working with local experts and local team to come up with plans that would actually apply a co-creating methodology, allowing citizens to be involved in the issue definition onwards up until the implementation of the plan. And that we would like these processes to have as a joint creation of outcomes with citizens, so not just of experts or local teams. We have worked together as a group, and our group is made by, let's say, on average 34 components, depending on the meetings. And we have worked by in two ways. At the individual level, we have worked by setting up what we have called engaged corners. That is to say that we at the JRC have set up spaces to dialogue with the local experts and team and to co-design together the local plan. And this leads back, let's say, to the metaphor of the butterfly, meaning that we have seen over the month that this space for dialogue was absolutely pivotal to come up with a plan that, let's say, also methodologically reflected co-creation. But on the other side, these kind of space allowed us to build a partnership with the people we were working with. And I think this is a fundamental part of engagement in all of, let's say, in all of its expressions and forms, that the relationship becomes a partnership rather than just, let's say, a one-way communication. And it was indeed a space to, let's say, enhance our mutual understanding and trust and learning as we were working with 10 different, let's say, cultural contexts. And we have acted as sort of critical friend throughout this process. At the collective level, we have been asking our partners what were their needs and what kind of capacity building they needed, and from different point of view. And we have made sure that we cover different kinds of aspects that were related to engagement by, as you're doing today, inviting also, let's say, external experiences to share their stories about engagement. Each city that we have been working with has come up with what we called a local plan that, as I said before, is now in most cases in the process of being implemented. I say in most cases because the pandemic has deeply affected the capacity of local partners to, let's say, carry out the activity as first planned. And we had obviously to, we had to adapt, but not just for organizational reason, but also for, if you will, more symbolic reasons on whether it was that relates more to some kind of reflection that we had as a group on whether it was appropriate to engage, if it was possible actually to engage, if citizens were interested also to be engaged. One of the most interesting things of this project, in my view, is that it returns something about engagement that we already knew before and that we know, but that sometimes we forget. That is to say that there is not one form of engagement. There are multiple forms of engagement, and each city really came up with a plan that was different methodologically, from a content perspective, and in terms of who were the citizens that were being engaged. So to go to give you an overview, in a couple of cases, that is to say, in the city of Leiden in the Netherlands and in Vilnius in Lithuania, the focus of our experts were on anonymous green lawns that you normally find in between residential buildings. So from their point of view, they wanted to engage local inhabitants. So the citizens were the people living in that very specific neighborhood. And they wanted to engage them on the co-creation of these kinds of spaces. In other cases, specifically in the case of Palermo, Regalbuto, and Novi Sad, the Biodiversities was a sort of opportunity for the local expert/team to work with the local inhabitants, but in a different way. Their purpose was to make a sort of reflection on what is the relationship between nature and us human beings living in these kinds of spaces. Why is that? Well, for example, in Novi Sad, the reason for it was that basically only 5% of the municipal land is covered by green spaces. So in that case, the context led a sort of articulation of the need that is specific to Novi Sad and not to other kinds of context. In the case of Palma, let's say the team came up with different kinds of green interventions, some of which resemble what is called tactical urbanism, for example, pollinators garden, so placing strategically across the city and making some kind of green intervention. And they did so because they wanted to start within the municipality itself a sort of reflection on how can planning become more collaborative and more, let's say, open to citizen engagement. So they have used this project to start a sort of institutional learning process. In the case of Valongo, the idea is to, which is in Portugal, the idea is to co-design with citizens and other stakeholders a green vision of the city, to connect the project with other participatory process that the municipality has been put forth over the year. And these kind of more discursive form of engagement couples with specific activities that, for example, take the form of a walking tour in which citizens can reappropriate the green spaces in their own neighbors. In other cases, a kind of activity are closer to what we call citizen science. That is to say that the citizen in this case becomes an amateur scientist and provides input to a research process that can then have a policy impact, let's say, impact that takes different form. So even when I was thinking what to present to you, it was very kind of difficult to think of one case that would be representative of all, as there are actually 10 cases which are all very different from each other. And they are also different on how they conceptualize the citizen and who they are interested to talk to. And this is a part we have very much insisted on in the design phase, asking who are you talking to? Who do you want to engage? What kind of, why should a citizen engage in the process also you are designing? And if we can agree that overall all the citizens that are in one way or another involved in this project are affected or interested public, the form they take locally is very different. In some cases, it's really, let's say, the local inhabitants, that is to say that it is in the capacity of being, let's say, of residing, of living into a specific street or neighbor that defines the citizen to be engaged. In other cases, for example, in the case of Leiden, the green lawn in between, let's say, residential building, these residential buildings are inhabited by marginalities, and which are also in the literature on engagement considered, let's say, non-usual suspects and social groups that can be more difficult to engage with. And as I said before, in other cases, it was the citizen was the amateur scientist, or more generally, somebody that was participating as an active citizen in the local city. However, despite differences, we have insisted very much on, let's say, on a methodological kind of approach that could help to think through the process by considering different kinds of gear wheels to construct the citizen engagement. So we have in our work came up with 6 kind of gear wheels or bubbles, or let's say aspects to consider. And these, in our view, and also building on the literature, somehow cover the aspects to think through when engaging with citizens. And the first thing that we say is that it's very important to take stock, and to take stock of what is already out there, who are other partners that I can partner with, not to reinvent the wheel. Another aspect which is very important is what is the scope of the whole activity, and what do I want to achieve in terms of process and outcomes. It follows the who is the citizens, as well as what kind of methods will I employ. And also, and this is a part which is sometimes not considered, is the follow-up. So what happened after? What kind of commitment do I make with the citizens I engage? What happened to their, let's say, participation? Now, these are, let's say, this is a very simplified way to think about an engagement process. But we have found in our experience that these very simple questions sometimes are very difficult to answer. And so it's kind of useful to have them in mind. Of course, none of these aspects, that is to say, none of the context, the methodology, the citizen, the implementation phase, the follow-up, do not, let's say, are not like silos. They somehow work together as if there were gear wheels that rotate. So the project right now is basically in its implementation phase, and the interest from our side is, let's say, can be summed up by mentioning these 3 different aspects. So what we want to learn from this project is, what does engagement on about in the field of biodiversity mean? What kind of forms of engagement are we talking about or can happen? The other aspect that we, for us, is very important is to understand how the relationship between expert and non-expert plays out, and how these can feed into the planning practices and let's say the environmental management, because this is actually a very big challenge for citizen engagement projects. And the third aspect is to ask, are citizens actually empowered by these kinds of projects and processes that are then put in place? So to have a sort of reflection and evaluation on what happened, what does biodiversity change in terms of decision making. And returning to the point I started from, so for us, the most important lesson so far has been actually on the difficulties and challenges that mainstreaming citizen engagement encounter in public institutions. So in spite of, let's say, good intentions by working with our partners, we can clearly see that there are many institutional challenges to consider and to tackle. And for this reason, we have asked our partners to keep a resistance diary in which they take note of what kind of issues they encounter. And in most cases, the issues come when, for example, the public authority itself is involved. So it's not when, for example, we work with civil society organization, that in that case, there are other kinds of challenges. And to, let's say, come up with a sort of thick reflection about this issue, one of our experts will actually run a research project on institutional challenges. And we are going to have a dedicated session about the institutionalization of citizen engagement during the EU Week of Citizen Region, which is going to be open, and it may be also of interest to this project that has within itself the involvement of public authorities. That said, just to conclude very quickly, from a collective point of view, we aim to, let's say, to 3 different kinds of outcome. One of which is an atlas, that is to say a collection of maps which have been used by our expert in different phases of the project, and which in a sense reflect the power dynamics between expert and non-expert knowledge. Some of our partners have asked to come up with a sort of evaluation framework to assess the participatory processes. So this leads back to what I was saying previously about the degree of empowerment of citizens that are involved. And the third outcome could be a sort of reflexive outcome in the form of a video. And we would use, in this case, video making as a sort of technique to return in a reflexive and critical way the whole project so far. Last but not least, so I think it's very important to mention that this project is not just, let's say, it's just led by me, quite the contrary. There are different people involved with different kinds of expertise. We are, Angela and I are part of the engagement team, and then there are other colleagues whose expertise in the field of citizen science and mapping of ecosystem services. There is a newly, let's say, a midterm report has been published about this project, and I'm happy to share it with you. And there is also a website of the project on OPLA, or sort of web page, better than website, in which there are updates about it. And that's all. I think I ran a little bit over time, and I apologize.
No worries.
Question.
It was really interesting. Thank you, Anna Paola. So it was really good. No problem at all, even if it was a bit longer. And I see some familiar faces. I'm happy to see also Sven, whom we know also quite well, that is also involved in the project. So thank you very much for sharing. And I see really a lot of points in common with what we're doing in Transform. We do also have a similar composition of our So we call them clusters. So it's basically a group of partners working together at the regional level with a kind of a mix of competencies and representing different stakeholder groups. We have something we have seen a lot in Transform also is the importance to really work on local specificities. So it never works to have a one size fits all approach. So this is something we really dedicated a lot of attention to in Transform. And as you can see, although it's really like in your project, although we are really working towards similar aims and scopes, we really do have, we are really setting up differently, different implementation processes and plans at a local, regional level. And I think we're also really working, focusing on similar things. We are also trying to look at how to measure in a way. It's very difficult, of course, but look at the impact of what changes through these processes, basically. So I'm going to break the ice and maybe ask a first question if I can, and then of course leave the floor to project partners. I hope they will also be curious to know more about the project. But my curiosity was, I don't know if it's a task that is already ongoing or maybe it's for later on, but if you are already seeing somehow or assessing or even just through discussion these diaries, for example, if somehow is emerging, what is really the added value for the cities that are involved in facing these challenges? I think I totally agree with you. I mean, it's not easy and it really needs a lot of time to take shape in the right way. But for what I see, there are already some ongoing activities that are really nice. They have been co-developed locally. And maybe, I don't know, I was just curious to know if from interaction from cities, you're already identifying some added value perceived by them.
Yes, thank you for the question. I think that we first need to agree. I mean, that's how I would answer, what is value? In the sense that what is clear is that bringing citizen engagement within the work of a public administration is not just an add-on, it's a different way of working. And to fully understand this different way of working and what it can bring in terms of, let's say, at least from our perspective, let's say, to bring a policy impact, and then we can talk about what is this, but we need a different evaluation framework. So in a sense, the weights have to change if we agree this is something to move towards. There are different kinds of argument that also our, let's say, partners try to make and have made in their, let's say, dialogue with other colleagues within the municipality is, let's say, the normative argument, that is to say citizen engagement is the right way to go. There is the instrumental argument, citizen engagement helps us to reach this outcome. The thing is that none of these arguments work if there is not somehow a space, a sort of institutional space that welcomes a degree of experimentation. There is a lot of fear, at least in the stories we are told, in terms of what on a lot of fear related to engaging with citizens in terms, for example, of the length of the process that will, let's say, happen because of that. So we work with certainly very committed and passionate partners, and that in a sense also have are icebreaker in some of the institutions they work. And they certainly see the added value, but I think they're trying to change the way in which that value is evaluated. I don't know if I've answered, but
Yeah, it was a bit of a tricky question. I know it was a bit on purpose because we are facing, actually, we are talking about this also within Transform. So we can definitely relate to what you say, and it's definitely difficult. Yeah, we fully relate. Yeah, with what you just mentioned. Would anyone have? So I have a lot of curiosity and question, but I will stop and leave floor. Yes, Angela, please.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Anna Paola, for your wonderful presentation and for your experience. Definitely inspiring for us. As Marcia said, we have a lot in common, of course, because participatory engagement processes involving policymakers I think are similar in terms of opportunities, challenges, and you have some citizen engagement champions or people really passionate in this, but of course there are so many challenges at institutional level in terms of procedures, in terms of convincing somehow colleagues to embark on this kind of process. So I really see what you have we shared before in terms of fears and challenges and all these kind of things. I have some curiosity about the selection, let's say, of the citizen engaged by the cities, by the partners. So I would like to know a little bit more about how did the cities engage the citizens through random selection, through a communication campaign. I suppose with 10 cases, of course, there are different approaches, but I would like to know a little more about this. And also about the follow-up, because yeah, I definitely agree. The follow-up phase is really, really important because it's at the basis of the building up of the trust relationship between the institutions and the citizens, more than the process in itself. Because of course, if citizens involved in this kind of process don't see the outcomes, the impact of their contribution, at some point, of course, this process doesn't have a value for them. It's just a waste of time, just a waste of energy, and this kind of things. So the follow-up is a critical phase, but sometimes, as you said before, it's something not considered too much in implementing and planning this kind of process. So I would like to know a little more about the follow-up in these 10 cases, if you can tell us more about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Recruitment of citizens. It depends on who is asking the question. In the sense, I'll make an example. We are working with a partner from Regalbuto, which is a very small city in Sicily, which is in between the Simeto Valley and not far from Catania. And it's a very peculiar, and I cite this case because I think it's a sort of exemplary case of engagement, because the expert we work with is part of the junta. She's the let's say the planning counselor, and she comes let's say from an experience in participatory action research, which was conducted there. So she is very sensitive about citizen engagement, and she constructed, together with others, a process in which the recruitment of citizens started first through a sort of outreach phase, in which a number of local stakeholders were interviewed. And the focus in Regalbuto is really on, let's say, on coming up with a strategic plan for this small city, which counts 7,000 inhabitants, so it's very small. And it is a small city which is affected by the population, shrinkage of resources, youth unemployment, and it can be, in a sort of sense, representative of many other places in Southern Europe. And the plan she came up with consisted into 4 phases. The outreach phase engage with stakeholders of different kind that in a sense have a say in whatever is that development will mean in Regalbuto in the years to come. The second part of the outreach phase consisted in door-to-door interviews with local inhabitants. Very short, 10 minutes, a sort of way to engage and also create a sort of interest in these projects. And these interviews were conducted by youth, which are part of the these, now I do not know the English words, but in the Servizio Civile, in the civil service. And so in a way, everything that happens within this project involves somebody locally that is already part of that very discourse. And then the following phases encompass a community mapping activity, and then a co-design of, okay, once we have understood the needs, what do we do with these needs? And what kind of action are we going to take? And so the whole process moves from a sort of outreach activity, reflection, and then production of co-production of something. And in this case, the recruitment is very granular, because you really go door to door to do this kind of recruitment. And she's in a position in which she can also act in representation of the municipality to do certain things. So in a sort of sense, it's a happy, challenging, but happy position to do that. In other cases, it's much more difficult, and communication campaigns have been done. But yeah, this is I think a good example, and a positive example. And on the follow-up, so I'm actually very proud that we in the contract we have made the follow-up at least a sort of mandatory phase, because we really want to stress the fact that there needs to be some thought on what happened after. And we are also working with partners that do not reason much in terms of project, but on processes. So in a sense, the activity within biodiversity builds upon existing processes. And this is, I think, also a learning lesson, because given the challenges of the pandemic, we have seen that those that were able to move forward were the ones that were already rooted locally in one way or the other. The form of the follow-up has not yet been defined because it depends on many variables, but and not least some of the cities haven't started yet, so it's too early to say. And what we're seeing is actually, I mean, this is not like a linear process. Maybe they have thought of some follow-up in terms of a sort of light give back to the citizens involved, or the deployment of recommendation to the municipality. But I think it will change, because it's inherent to citizen engagement that things change as we move forward.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I wonder, I'm a bit concerned about time, because I know that Anna Paola, you have to join another meeting. So I'm not sure if we have time for another question. And I'm also a bit worried about Annelies' presentation. I see, Thomas, you had raised your hands. I'm really sorry about this.
One question.
Okay, let's go super fast. Thomas, go ahead.
Hi, yes, it's a very quick question, and maybe a even quicker disclaimer before. I worked with Angela Pereira for a couple of years, so I know a bit of your work. And I was intrigued by this notion of the critical friends. And I wanted to ask kind of what exactly you meant by that. And then I wanted to hear just a little bit about these resistance diaries, because I think that's an intriguing idea. And I was wondering, knowing a bit the JRC ecosystem too, if you yourself also have resistance diaries.
Yeah, great question. So critical friend. That's my personal, let's say, position. I think that working in the field of participation is imbued with, let's say, a sort of strong, also sometimes normativity and strong expectation that if you say participation, then we are all good. Actually, a lot of time, this is a slippery concept, is used as a sort of window dressing to cover manipulation, tokenism. And our job within this project and in other project is to actually make sure not to fight for a purity of the term, because it's not that, it's not just one form of citizen engagement, but that it is not some kind of meaning remains in its usages. So we wanted to establish with our partners a relationship that was honest in terms of the challenges they were encountering, and we did not want that they and us use these terms as a sort of way to say paint a situation which is not there. In most cases, I mean, this took a lot of time, literally months of conversation, in which at one point our interest was not so much in them saying we are doing, let's say, citizen empowerment, but in showing the ability to critically think of this project as a sort of icebreaker, maybe in just introducing participation to the public administration. So in some cases, I don't think they will actually do big like engagement activity, but it's more like inserting this new way of working. Resistance. Well, I don't have a diary, but we maybe Angela does. But I mean, we certainly share with many of our partners these kinds of challenges because we work into a political organization, and institutions and public institutions are never like a monolithical kind of thing. They have different souls, different people, and it is working through these kinds of complexity that things change. So we have encouraged them to do so because we think this is one of the most precious policy lesson to learn. It's not enough to say that we want participation. It's important to understand why is it so hard to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, really all really important reflections that I think we share very much also in Transform. Thank you really much, Anna Paola. I think it was really interesting for all of us, and I do hope we'll stay in touch in the future. I think we can keep sharing experiences. Would be nice.
Thank you for the invitation. If there are any questions, I can share the email. I can also share the presentation. So thanks. And
that would be great. Thank you very much. Right. Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Bye, thanks. Okay, so let's, sorry, Annelies, for the little delay. Let's move on to the next speaker. So we have with us Annelies Duerinckx, who is actually leading the Flemish Citizen Science Center. It's been, I think, a really interesting experience. I was actually there a few years ago when the center was launched, led by Annelies. And I think Annelies has some really interesting stories to share with us about the challenges of launching funding and support for citizen science in the Flemish region of Belgium, but also so in two ways. So not only all of a sudden working with researchers in supporting them to involve citizens through citizen science, but also the other way around. So how to raise interest also within societal actors and also raise awareness that they can be part of this process. So I'm going to stop sharing and welcome Annelies. Hello.
Hi, thanks for the invitation. I hope my internet connection will keep up because I've been thrown out of the meeting a couple of times.
Oui, okay, no worries. We will.
I will try to keep an eye on it, not to disappear on you.
Okay.
Voilà. I think you can see my slides. Okay.
We can see the. Can you go to? I think it's on display settings because we can see also the next slide thing. Yeah. I mean, it's okay, but maybe.
Yeah. Maybe if I cancel the presenter view.
Also.
Okay. Is it okay now, or now you see?
It's not in presentation mode yet.
I have because I have two slides. I have two screens, and I think the presentation mode is now on the other screen. How do I change? It's always like that. You test something, it works fine, and then you go live, and
no worries.
Doesn't work anymore.
I mean, we can see, but
yeah, but maybe I can change the monitor here. Okay, maybe like this.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Great, thanks.
Okay. So yeah, as Margia said, I'm Annelies. I'm coordinating Scivil, the Flemish Citizen Science Center, and I would like to share with you some of our experiences in supporting civil society to reach out to researchers, and the other way around from the viewpoint of citizen science. So just to make sure that we're talking about the same thing, what do we see as citizen science? Oxford English Dictionary has a beautiful definition on it. Scientific work undertaken by members of the general public, often in collaboration with or under the direction of professional scientists and scientific institutions. So for us, it's about citizens, non-professional scientists actively taking part in scientific research. So not just filling out a survey, but doing a research action that normally a professional researcher would do. And usually it's data collection or data analysis, but it can be actually in any part of the scientific cycle. Citizens can help define research questions, they can help to develop research methods, and they can also help with the valorization of projects. And we see three main goals in doing citizen science. Research is always a part of it. There's always a research question, but usually there's also this educational component. Citizens learn something about the way science works from taking part in a project or about the topic of the project. And also usually, but not always, there's this aim for societal impact, especially if it's about environmental things, air quality, traffic. People take part because they want something to change in society. And what do we do as Scivil? So we are funded by the Flemish government to support citizen science in Flanders and to promote it. So we have three main goals: promotion of citizen science, and we do that mainly to initiators of citizen science, because we want to stimulate more citizen science projects, more qualitative citizen science projects. Looking for synergies, creating network opportunities. There's already so much citizen science going on also in Flanders, and we just try to bring people together so that they can start working together, they can exchange experiences. We notice that when we bring people together, they're always very enthusiastic, they learn something from each other. And then we try to support project coordinators in in setting up projects, and we also provide advice to the Flemish government. Well, when they launched a citizen science funding call 3 years ago and 2 years ago, and then we provided some advice on how to select projects, how to do that process. So when Scivil started 2 years ago, we mainly had contacts with academia. I also have a research background. I knew how that world works, and I thought citizen science is a great way as a researcher to reach out to the citizens to make your research known. It's great. And we started from that viewpoint, supporting academia to do citizen science, but very soon came the voices of the citizens and citizen organizations. Like, it's not fair. We're here too. We're also doing citizen science. Why can't we apply for funding? We also need support. And so we started thinking, oh, we should make it a bit broader what we're doing. It's not just for the researchers, it's also for the citizens, because they're at least equally important in citizen science, maybe even more important, and also for the projects that start within the citizens and citizen organizations. They often are very motivated as well to do their project, to reach their impact. And then we started a strategic trajectory right at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, to see how we could broaden our focus a bit, but not too much, so that we still could work focused. And one of the first things that we discussed in this trajectory was that we didn't want this top-down versus bottom-up citizen science, but actually anyone can initiate a citizen science project. So citizens can initiate it and academia can initiate it, but maybe the government, local authorities, they can also initiate a citizen science project, NGOs, financiers, maybe even commercial companies. And we did focus groups with lots of different stakeholders on what is citizen science to you? Have you an interest in citizen science? Could it work for you as a method? What obstacles do you see for yourself to do citizen science? And we really learned a lot from doing all these interviews and talking to all these people. And actually everyone saw something in citizen science as a good method to answer research questions and at the same time to engage with other stakeholders relevant to them. And so starting from this today, I just want to share a couple of stories with you about these different parties initiating citizen science projects and maybe some issues that they had, or some different viewpoints that they had in initiating their projects. So the one that we know best are the academia. They have a very clear research question ready. They know how to engage. They know what they want the citizens to do. They have good protocols for it. But then the question that they come to us with most often is, well, we really underestimated the communication efforts that you need for such a project. Apparently the citizens, they're not ready at their desk to jump at your project. It's you really need to engage them not once, but you need to keep on engaging them. And it's not always as easy as the researchers maybe in advance thought it would be. So one thing we did was we developed a communication in citizen science, a guide with some practical tips and tricks on how you, all the things that you can do to keep your audience engaged. And one thing that worked really well for a couple of projects was to really work together with existing organizations in society. For example, there was the project I for Diabetes. They wanted to train an artificial intelligence system that could automatically recognize diabetic retinopathy. So it's an eye disease that people suffering from diabetes could get, and they need to go to an optometrist every year to screen for this disease. And now they wanted to train an artificial intelligence system to make the screening more easy, more accessible to everyone, and to annotate all these pictures of the eye. They work together with the Diabetes Liga. So it's a organization working with diabetes patients, with families of diabetes patients, with people already interested in the topic, people already being engaged, wanting to do something about this disease. And it was really good collaboration for them, because it was easier this way to find a good target audience, more than just the general public. And something similar was with the Mama Mito project. It's about maternal lineage, so it's genealogy. Normally it's from a male point of view, and you make your family tree, and then you have your father and his father, and also in DNA they can link the DNA to a father's line. People that are connected share some similarities in their DNA through the father's line. But this project wanted to do that from a female point of view, from the mother's line. And for this, they worked together with Historis, a genealogical organization with lots of very enthusiastic volunteers. And the project really had to cut subscriptions because people were so enthusiastic to take part in it, that they just could only do so much trainings and workshops to get everyone on board for it. And also here the fact that we see that most participants in citizen science projects it's very classical, but the higher educated male person in his 40s or 50s. And in this Mama Mita project, since it so specifically focuses on this maternal lineage on women, there were lots more female participants also. So just from the way, the type of research question that you choose really inspires other people to take part in the project. So it's really good to think that through in advance. What's the goal of the project? What research question do you want an answer to? And which target audience is motivated to help you find an answer to it? And then from a totally different point of view, there was an NGO, Ricolto. They're an organization stimulating sustainable food, stimulating sustainable food in supermarkets. And they came to us with a question, we really want to do a citizen science project, but actually we don't really know how to do it and what to do. So it was quite the opposite as the researchers' point of view. Here, they had this research that was done in the Netherlands, the Superlijst, the supermarket list, creating an overview of how sustainable supermarkets are. And they also wanted to do the same research in Belgium, in Flanders, but they wanted to involve citizens to do it. They wanted to involve citizens because they felt that they have all these people that are engaged with their organization that are waiting to come into action to help, and they want to provide them something that they can help with, and also as a way of reaching out, as putting the topic of sustainable food really on the map. They thought if we make it a citizen science project, it seems to be a method that works well to make a topic more known to policymakers, for example. So they knew very well why they wanted to do a citizen science project, but actually they didn't really have a research question for the citizens to solve. And they're still in the process of defining their citizen science project, but they came to us for advice, like what would be a good research question that we could, that citizens could help us with. And it was actually quite difficult within the framework of this supermarket list that they wanted to do to find research questions where the added value of the citizens was high enough, because most of the things that we could ask citizens to do, they could also do without the help of the citizens. And we noticed that citizen science, it works better when you really need the help of the citizens. You don't just engage them because you want to do citizen science. You engage them because you need their knowledge, because they have something unique that no one else has, and that's why you need the citizens. And so they came to us for advice, and now they're going to a couple of researchers that are also working on sustainable foods to see if they can connect to research questions from them. They try to bring together a mixed group of people, of academics, of citizens to see how they can make it a citizen science project. And also, funding is a problem for everyone. And in their case, also the time frame that they had in mind was quite short, because they said like, we define a research question this week, and then within a month we can start promoting the project to the public, and then 2 months later we have all the results, and we can start analyzing them. But well, they don't even have a research question yet. They still need a platform, a communication plan to reach out to the citizens. So I think it will take more than 3 to 4 months to really start from we want to do a citizen science project and finishing it all. And in our experience, it takes, well, 1 or 2 years to really build this community. And even if you already have the community, there's still a lot of steps to take for your project. So that was also a bit our advice: take enough time to do it. Then something else, we were contacted by a commercial company. They sold green roofs, and they said, yeah, we want to do citizen science. Can you help us come up with an approach? So a bit similar to the last one. They wanted to do citizen science because they want to stimulate more people to install green roofs. Yeah, for one, because they sell green roofs, but also because they believe that green roofs can really help with climate change and in creating more resilient cities. So we brainstormed with them a bit on how they could do a citizen science approach. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, it was totally apart from this, but we also got a question from a university saying like, oh, we want to do citizen science. We do research on green roofs. We're interested in why people have green roofs and why not, and how to stimulate more people installing green roofs. So we thought, oh, this is perfect. We just match them up together and they can work together. But actually it didn't work because they really didn't trust each other, because the researchers thought, yeah, if we work with a commercial company, no one will believe our research. They will think it's just a promotional stunt. They will think it's not valid research, and we need to publish this research, so it needs to get reviewed and everything. So this, it's important that the research is valid. And the commercial company were also a bit hesitant. Yeah, but these researchers, they go so much into depth. They want everything to be super fine, and we maybe don't have the time and the money to do that. We just want to engage with our public and measure these impacts more or less. So it was, I don't know, I thought in advance, this is the perfect match. What's the odds of this happening within 1 month? 2 people separately contacting us on the same subject. But then, as of now, it's still, they're still going their own way because of the trust issues. Local authorities could also be initiators of citizen science. We have one very popular project here in Flanders, and I think it's now also spreading in Europe. In Dutch, it's called Telraam. In English, it's now launched as We Count. It's this camera that you put in front of your house, aimed at the street, and it counts the traffic coming by using artificial intelligence. So it counts the number of bikes, the number of cars, the number of heavy traffic. And it's really interesting for local authorities to map out the traffic in their city, for example, if they want to make changes to the mobility issues in their city. And so we also got questions from cities like, we want to do citizen science, but we have no idea how to start. What is citizen science and how do we do it? And then we got some funding for a project to create a a toolbox for local authorities on citizen science. Because yeah, local authorities, they're so close to the people in the cities, to all the organizations in the cities, and there's a lot of added value in all the data that they could gather with citizen science and use it for evidence-based policy. But sometimes it's a bit of an issue, also a trust issue, a bit like with the companies, like the citizens, they want to take part in projects more to protest on something, like there is too much traffic in my street and I need it to be solved right now. And then they take part in this project. And they think, okay, now we got proof that there's too much traffic in my street. We send it to the city and they have to do something with it. And then after 3 months, they get a bit angry. Now it still isn't solved, while that the people governing the city then say like, yeah, but it takes time. If we need to change something on your street, if it needs a bicycle path, or it takes 2 to 3 years, or maybe even longer before it's there, and that's something that the citizens don't know. So it's a bit difficult on how they communicate with each other, or expectation management. If you start something like this as a local authority, you need to really communicate that you want to implement solutions, but that implementing solutions will take time, because otherwise people might get disappointed. I see time is running by, so I will try to go quickly. Of course, citizens and citizen organizations as initiators, lots of successful projects, but sometimes it's also a difficult search. We got contacted from someone from Klimaatpodium Brugge. So Bruges, it's a beautiful city to visit as a tourist. And he wanted to measure climate impact on Bruges, but from a very broad view of mobility, energy, circular economy. So he had a very broad interdisciplinary research question, and he had great difficulties finding researchers to support this project, because they are very specialized in one small topic. And on top of that, he said, yeah, these universities, it's really a labyrinth of research groups. It's really difficult to find your way to the right researcher. But it's something that we try to help him with. We also linked him to the science shops of universities, so they could also help him find good contact persons for researchers. But it's something that I didn't see before this contact with this person, that to outsiders, universities are really complicated, and it's really hard to go and find someone that can help you with your research question. And then just to conclude quickly, this year, we have our own citizen science project at Scivil, together with a knowledge center on data and society. It's funded by the Flemish government. And it's called Amai, which is a typical Flemish expression where you say, whoa, this is great, Amai, and it happens to have the letters AI in it, artificial intelligence. And that's what the project is about. So we want to stimulate citizens to think about how AI can help them. And we especially want to reach out to the people not interested in technology and artificial intelligence, and luring them in to think about the subjects by applying it to themes that are relevant to them. So by asking them, you're interested in mobility, right? It's important to you. And what if I told you that artificial intelligence could maybe help you with your mobility issues? Maybe then you would be willing to learn a very little bit about artificial intelligence, just so that you could provide us with a question or an idea or a problem that maybe could be solved by artificial intelligence. So we set up a process in the first phase, which is now just finished, of collecting ideas from the broader public on issues that maybe artificial intelligence could solve. And then now we will start doing some co-creation sessions to dive into these research questions. What's the issue that really needs to be solved? What are what's the scope of a solution? When is the solution really a solution to your problem? And then in September, we will launch an open call where consortia can apply for funding to actually create solutions to the questions of the citizens. So in the end, 4 projects will really be realized. Also together with the citizens, we want to try also to have a citizen science component in the training of these AI systems in the final phase. And one thing that we did not foresee, we knew communication was a big issue in citizen science, so we had a lot of thought on how to communicate this well. But then COVID came and we couldn't speak to people directly. And it was unexpectedly hard to get people to just submit their question online in a form. Because when I then talked to my friends, it was the first time that we could go out for a drink on a terrace. And I told them about this project, and they had lots of great ideas. Yeah, it could maybe help with this and with this and with this. And then I said, oh yeah, it's great ideas, just submit them to our platform. And I had to text them 5 times afterwards, and then they submitted maybe 1 or 2 questions. While now that there's things are opening up a bit more, we went to Technopolis. It's this technology center for kids where they can go and do experiments, and then the parents just stand there waiting. And we had our we brought our project there, and we talked to all these parents, and then we gathered 100 IDs, 100 questions just in 1 weekend, while it took us like 4 weeks to gather 100 questions online. So talking to people in real life, it's worth a lot. And I really hope in the future, when the pandemic ends, that we can go back to seeing the people again and speaking to them. So I think, yeah, and one thing I wanted also to mention about this project is that we really want to bring together people from different perspectives. So we have the citizens in these co-creation sessions. We also invite AI experts, researchers on AI, researchers on climate change, on mobility, civil society organizations that are doing something around these themes, and then also the commercial companies, SMEs that would create a solution to the problems that are submitted by the people. These campfire sessions, these co-creation sessions, they have not yet taken place. So I don't know yet how it will go. We have a great plan, but if there's one thing that I learned, it's that something always comes up that you haven't foreseen, and it's okay. You just have to find a solution to it when it shows up. So that's what I wanted to share with you. I hope there's still time for a few questions.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much. It was definitely very inspiring. And again, I can see lots of points in common with challenges that we are facing within Transform. I have, again, some questions of curiosity, but I wanted to ask my very hidden project partners if they are there, if they can appear again, if you feel like putting your camera on, so that we don't feel too lonely here. And of course, if you have questions, I will shut up first, because I know that I always get to speak more than the others. So I will retain myself from asking questions this time, and look forward to see if anyone has curiosity about the presentation. Angela, yes, please go ahead.
Just a quick question about the engagement, the collaboration with companies, because for us, of course, it's a relevant point when we talk about quadruple helix, and so interacting and collaborating with policymakers, citizens, but also companies or innovators, people from the not from the public sector, but from the private field. That, of course, this can be a challenge in terms of building trust and how to ensure the transparency, what is the outcomes, how the results will be used by the different actors involved in this kind of process. So I would like to know more about this. And you mentioned your experience with this, but yeah, if you have some good hints or other experience to be shared, they will be more than welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I think trust seems to be a big issue when companies, commercial companies, are related. But from our point of view, it might not be so different from a civil movement starting up a project, because they want less traffic in their street, and that's their motivation, and they're looking from that point of view to the results, just like a commercial company is looking to the results from a point of view of, I want to sell more green roofs. But as long as you're very open on how you did the research and how the participants helped in it, I think openness about the process is really the key, no matter who initiates the project and no matter what goal they have in mind, like which results they're trying to prove. Even a scientist wants to prove his or her research question in mind, as long as you're open about what you want to prove and how you did the research, and that you did it in a neutral, scientifically sound way, it shouldn't be a problem that it's a commercial company. But we noticed that there's lots of hesitance, especially from the scientific world, towards these commercial companies. So I think it's a matter of, yeah, finding good examples of just being the first one to do it anyway, and being really open about this process.
Thank you.
Maybe I can ask. Yes, Thomas, go ahead. I will leave my question for last because it's a biased one, because I know Scivil well, so it's more a curiosity. So go ahead, Thomas.
Well, thanks for the interesting presentation. I have a question on something you mentioned in the very beginning, and this was this kind of sometimes this perceptions that citizens have problems that are immediately relevant to scientists. So this kind of, where's the connects between researchers and citizens and these kind of things. And I was wondering about your experiences about this phase of collective problem framing, because this also can, of course, be one instance where there is a power discrepancy. Who gets to define what is the actual problem and how much influence is there and what is a relevant problem for whom? And this is not always easily solvable, of course. So I would be interested in hearing about your experiences with this.
It's a good way of framing the problem also from your side, I think. Yeah, I think there's lots of difference, like the citizen or the citizen movement it's not one group. We noticed that some citizen movements that existed for a long time, they dare to speak up and they say, we have this problem and it has to be solved, and they reach out to policymakers and they go to the researchers, or in my experience, in lots of these cases, they are also researchers. So they have their research part, researching something, and then they have their citizen hat, being concerned about something in society, which might be a totally different topic. And they dare to speak up. But then you also, you have the group of citizens that's really concerned with topics, but and as long as you speak to the group of citizens by themselves, they explain to you what their problem is, how they see the solutions, and then you put them together with some scientists, and all of a sudden they feel uncomfortable. They think, yeah, but I'm not the expert here. It's the scientists, they know most. I will just listen to them, and in most cases that's not true. They just have different experiences. The citizens have the best experience in what the problem actually is, but they really need lots of stimulation to speak up. And now, for example, in the AI program that we're running, we well, we try to bring them together, all the different groups of stakeholders, but we also have a separate citizen panel with only citizens to really capture their concerns without them feeling that they shouldn't speak up because someone else will know better anyway. So we take a bit more care of them because we feel that they're a bit more hesitant to speak up often.
Yeah, that's a really good, interesting option to have them, to have a separate space to express themselves. Okay, I would retain myself, but I'm curious to know more about how much, so you as Scivil, how much role do you play in this? Because from what you say, it looks like it's a really crucial role you play in supporting this very strong bottom-up or top-down, all this interaction between all these stakeholders. It would have been probably completely different if the Flemish government had decided to just have a funding program on citizen science without having a strong center supporting this and being able to reflect about all these about all these points that you just mentioned. And I think it's a very special case in this case because you have a sensitivity and know-how that really allow you to actually assess and address these challenges. So how does this feel from your sort of interface within, of course, the public agency that is funding these initiatives and all these stakeholders that you just mentioned, but at the same time you really play a crucial role, if I understand well?
Yeah, I think when the Flemish government asked us to launch this support center, they maybe had a smaller scope for us in mind. They launched a funding call for citizen science projects to which only researchers could apply, and maybe with partners as citizen movements, but the main applier had to be a researcher, and they aimed for us to mainly support these researchers in doing citizen science. But then, because really soon we got all these questions from all these other sites that they also were interested in citizen science and that it wasn't fair that they weren't allowed in the funding call. And I don't know, we just at Scivil, we had the feeling we could be so much more than just the support for the scientist, for the researcher part of citizen science. So we kind of took the liberty of broadening up our scope a little bit. It's a balancing exercise between keeping our funders happy, doing first and foremost what they fund us for, and then still we hope to find some extra time and some extra connections and links with others to also do all the other things that we think are still very relevant. So sometimes we also apply for separate funding to do these other things. And there's lots of people just coming to us for advice, and then it might just be a conversation of 1 hour where we point them out to some existing resources on citizen science that are particularly interesting for them. And then, they're always welcome to return if they still have new questions. So it's not that for every project we go all the way and we execute the project with them. We're just a sounding board in most cases.
Okay, then thank you very much. And this was really interesting. I hope these sessions these two presentations have been useful and inspiring. And I think we can I will stop the recording now. Okay.